Okay, everybody, we are back inside of Stable Diffusion and Blender. And what I want to show you today is a really cool way to quite possibly speed up your method of producing some concept art, some concept ideas, without having to worry about being connected to the internet. Because a lot of us will go over to Polyhaven or something like this, some site like this, where you can get our textures from. And here's some brick textures that we can use for a floor or a wall or something like that. And you download them and you've got them on your computer. Now, if you haven't downloaded a whole pile, you just, I forgot to get some brick stuff. You can actually, if you install Stable Diffusion locally, which I've done, and I highly recommend it because it means that you don't have to pay any money to go use a service elsewhere. And you're free to use this as often as you want on your own computer, connected to the internet or not. And it's a really simple thing to do to make a texture inside of Stable Diffusion simply by clicking this tiling button. So we'll click this tiling checkbox. And once we've done that, we can, I'm just going to leave everything else at default. Euler ancestral sampling steps at 20. I got a 512 by 512 image. Batch size of 1, batch count of 1, CFG scale at 7, and we're just going to put in brick road, and we will generate. Now this should go pretty quick because I don't have anything else really running at the moment, so we should see a brick texture pop up. And there it is. This could be a brick road. Absolutely. This is tileable. If we look at it, this can be totally tiled inside of Blender. So let's do that. And this doesn't end here. Actually, once we get through with simple thing, we're going to talk about puppies pretty soon. Anyway, so what we're going to do is we're going to just drag this into our scene. Now, one thing we have to keep in mind, this is a 512 by 512 image. If you want to make these bigger, which I highly recommend, 512 by 512 is pretty small. But if we are just doing concept art, 512 by 512 is not bad at all. But if you want to make it bigger, I highly recommend using a program called Chainer. You can get this off of GitHub. I'll do a whole other video talking about Chainer in the future. But essentially, it allows you to take a 512 by 512 image and then push them up to be a 2K image. And if you really want to, you can bring them up to an 8K image. But that's for another tutorial. But essentially, the idea is that I make my textures inside of Stable Diffusion, and then run them through Chainer, make them into 2K, so I have a little bit better quality. I mean, these are fantastic quality off of 512 by 512. Not bad at all. These are very, very usable textures. Anyhow, okay, so we bring this in. Now we've just brought it into Blender, so Blender has a reference to it. I can go ahead and delete this now. I don't need it in my scene. I'm going to get rid of the cube because I want to make a pathway. Shift-A to add a plane. Bam, there it is. Scale it on the Y so we can make a pathway. Let's Control A and apply the scale. We're going to tab and hit U to unwrap. So we have a place to place our texture. So Blender will know that this is what the shape is, and this is how we should apply our texture. So once we've done that, we're going to head over into our materials, hit New, grab the base color and change that to an image texture. Go to our image in the list here, change over our viewport to be this. Now, this doesn't look quite right. And if you're kind of new to Blender and you're kind of wondering, how do you texture is? So what we want to do is make a new window by just dragging from this top corner here. We're going to change this to the shader editor. This is super simple. Make sure you have the Node Wrangler add-on enabled. I'm not going to cover that because a billion other people have done it. If you don't have Node Wrangler enabled, it's weird by now. In fact, it should be done by default, but it isn't. So anyways, do that. Hit Control T, one texture coordinate, one mapping, and we're just going to plug the vector into the vector here, and that will allow us to change the scale of our texture. So we're going to just drag down on the scale, hit 5 for now, and look at that. Now we've got this texture kind of loaded in our path. Now, the next thing that I was going to demonstrate, and I think I might as well just do this whole demonstration part because it's going to be useful to somebody, I'm sure of it. We're going to hit Shift-A over in our nodes here. We're going to go Vector. We want a displacement. We also want a converter. We are going to grab a color ramp, right? And we're going to grab our materials node, bring it down here, plug the displacement into the displacement color, put the color from the color ramp into the height, and then we're going to grab the color from the image and plug that into the factor. We're going to switch. You can see it's already making a bit of a difference here. You can already see something. It's not quite what we want. Don't worry about it. Let's switch over to our render properties. We're going to hit cycles and use the GPU. This might slow down my computer just a smidge while capturing the screen at the same time. And it doesn't end here. We have to go into our materials and down near the bottom here. We're going to go into settings, and inside of settings, we will go bump, displacement, and bump. And when you do that, it's going to go kind of wonky right away, right off the bat. And that's mainly because we do not have things set up properly just yet. So let's go ahead and bring our light down. We're just going to bring our light real close, bring it down to 100 watts. Let's go ahead and make our background black, real dark, just a nice dark scene. And bring the camera in here so we can see we've already got something going. Something's going on here. And this is, it's fake. Remember, keep in mind that what we're doing is we're making a fake sort of bit of displacement, so this actually looks like brick. So now that we've got that part figured out, it's all wonky. So let's fix this. So what we want to do is we want to mess with the color ramp. And the color ramp is what's going to sort out the lights and the darks. So as we kind of bring the white this way, we're going to see things really change up. And let's kind of zoom out a little bit here. Let's bring the black in a little bit. Maybe not that way. Let's bring the white over maybe just a little bit this way. Something like that. And then our scale is just too big. So we're going to 0.2 and maybe 0.1. Something like that. And we're getting a little bit of that. Yeah, that's not looking too bad. If we want to see what we're doing, we can actually just take our color ramp and plug it straight into the material output. And we can see this is what we're making with this. We're making a white and black image that's going to drive the displacement. And that's what the color ramp is for. Actually, let's just take a look at that one more time real quick. I'll just put that in there. And if I bring the white back over this way, we can see how it makes everything a little bit grayer, which actually might not be too bad, just a little bit. If we bring the black over, we might be able to, might be really bumpy though. We actually want to bring those whites. We want to crush the whites, is what we call it. Okay, that's pretty good. And let's bring the image back in. Can't remember I think it's Shift Control left click, and that will bring that back. Okay, so it's pretty bumpy and it looks kind of weird, but from a distance it looks not too bad. Let's bring this light down just a smidge more, maybe to like 80 watts or something like that, and then up a little. You can see how we're getting, now it's pretty shiny still, so let's bring our roughness up a little bit. I learned a long time ago that you don't want to mess with specular much. You want to mess with roughness, and that will make things, everything has a specular to it. So I think I'm going to just bring the whites up a little bit more here, because I'm not liking how rough each brick is, every brick. Maybe a little bit like that. Come back. And it's starting to look like a brick wall, but the point is that you can get something that is a little bit, it's fake, obviously. And the other thing that we can do, actually, because we're using a displacement, we can tab into this object. And I think this is going to help it quite a bit. We'll right-click and we'll hit subdivide. And I'm just going to do something like, 50. And maybe more. Maybe we'll subdivide this by 80. And really get some subdivision. Okay, so look how crazy it's gone now, because we've got more polygons to play with. So let's take our scale and bring it down to 0.02. All right, so now we're getting somewhere. We're getting somewhere a little bit closer. Let's right-click, hit Shade Smooth. Let's see if Auto Smooth does a better job. It does a better job. All right, and I think we can bring the whites up just a smidge more, something like that. And then 0.03 maybe. Let's bump these things up. Maybe a little less. 0.025. because we're getting a lot of these cracks in here. And in that case, we can still flatten that out a little bit through this. And if it doesn't look like we have enough polygons, then we can right click, because we're doing displacement. Right click, subdivide just one time, tab out of that, and that'll give us a little bit more depth. It's quite interesting, to be honest, because we're getting these weird, but I'm not going to do a full texturing and bump map and displacement mapping tutorial here. What I really wanted to show you guys in the end was how this program can be used to make all kinds. And so back into Stable Diffusion, all I wrote in here was kittens or puppies. And in this case here, check this out. This one was the cutest one. This little penguins, right? So let's delete this cube. Let's bring in a plane again, and then we'll apply the image texture. So we're just going to do the same thing, just going to apply the image texture of the penguins, right? And there we've got our penguins in there. And again, if we scale this up a bit, tab into it, hit U, unwrap, and then it unwraps it so it can, so what we can do now is have it placed, so it's not placed this way, and then tab out of there and go into our shader editor. So just open this up, shader editor, click this, Control T, and then 5. Look at this. Now you can make a penguin wallpaper. Maybe if you're making a kid's room or something like that, you could just have these penguins all over the walls or something. If you want to make them a little bit shorter, you can actually just, so we want to make them shorter. We'll just put this at 6, and we got shorter penguins. And that is fantastic. And it goes for everything. We want to bring in some kittens, no problem. Drag that into your scene, go back to here, change this over to kittens. Bam, I'm going to wallpaper with kittens. So that's what I think is really useful. I think this program is really fantastic for being able to make textures on the fly, whether you're connected to the internet or not. Anything that comes to your mind, you know, something that you can't find over at Polyhaven or wherever you're looking for textures. You just want to come up with something weird. It could be penguins and kittens. Who cares? As long as you select tiling, it will make some kind of tiling texture. And then you just make it a little bit bigger with Chainer. You're good to go. So there it is. Hopefully that has been a little bit interesting. Some ideas for you guys and some thoughts and some creativity that hopefully is useful. So any questions, let me know. And we will continue on with this path of working with 3D, Stable Diffusion, AI, all kinds of stuff. So I'll see you guys in the next one.